Hey everyone, welcome back to Ask Literature, your go-to channel for all things related to English literature and literary theory. Today we're diving into a very relevant and crucial topic in both literature and cultural studies, critical race theory. Now, I know this can be a bit of a loaded term, especially with all the debates happening around it today, but we're going to break it down and explore how it applies to literature. And by the end of this video, I hope you'll have a clearer understanding of what critical race theory or CRT is, how it came to be, and how we can apply it to literary analysis. So let's start with the basics. What exactly is critical race theory? At its core, CRT is an intellectual movement and framework for examining the ways in which race and racism intersect with other forms of power such as law, culture, and politics. But it's more than just about individual acts of racism. It digs deep into the structural, systemic ways that racism is embedded in society. And when we apply this to literature, we start to see how these power dynamics play out in stories, characters, and even in the way texts are written or interpreted. Critical race theory originated in the 1970s and 1980s, primarily in American legal studies. Scholars like Derek Bell, Kimball Crenshaw, and Richard Delgado were some of the early pioneers who felt that traditional approaches to civil rights and equality didn't fully capture the complex ways that race and racism affect marginalized communities. CRT was born out of this dissatisfaction, offering a new lens to see how institutionalized racism works. Now, you might be thinking, okay, that's law and politics, but what does this have to do with literature? Great question. When we bring critical race theory into the world of literature, it allows us to interrogate how race and power are represented in texts. It helps us analyze how characters are constructed, how stories are told, and who gets to tell them. Literature doesn't exist in a vacuum. It reflects and reinforces the society it comes from. And because race is such a fundamental part of social identity, it shows up in literature in ways that can be both explicit and subtle. Let's take a moment to think about some examples. If you look at a classic novel like Huckleberry Finn by Mark Twain, race is a central theme. The character of Jim, an enslaved man, is depicted through a lens that reflects the racial attitudes of the time. CRT invites us to ask important questions about how Jim is portrayed, how his humanity is either recognized or dismissed, and how Huck's evolving relationship with him reveals deeper truths about race relations in America. By applying CRT, we can uncover layers of meaning in these texts that might not be immediately visible through other forms of literary analysis. Another powerful example is Beloved by Toni Morrison. This novel is steeped in themes of race, memory, and trauma, particularly in the aftermath of slavery. Through critical race theory, we can explore how Morrison portrays the long-lasting effects of racial oppression on individual identity and collective history. Morrison's work challenges us to confront the horrors of slavery not just as a historical fact, but as something that continues to shape the present. CRT helps us see the connections between personal pain and systemic injustice in ways that are both poignant and profound. What's really interesting about applying CRT to literature is that it doesn't just stop at analyzing characters or plot. It also encourages us to question the very structures of literature itself. For example, why are certain voices privileged while others are marginalized? Why have certain stories been canonized while others have been excluded? In many ways, CRT calls for a re-examination of the literary canon to include voices and perspectives that have been historically ignored or silenced. Think about the rise of African American, indigenous, and other minority literatures in the last century. These movements have forced us to reconsider what literature is valued and why. Now, one of the key concepts within critical race theory is the idea of intersectionality. This term was coined by Kimball Crenshaw, and it refers to how different forms of identity like race, gender, class, and sexuality interact and overlap. In literature, this is incredibly useful because characters aren't just one thing. They're not just defined by their race, they are also shaped by other aspects of their identity. For instance, in a novel like Their Eyes Were Watching God by Zora Neale Hurston, the protagonist Jenny navigates not only the challenges of being a black woman in a racist society, but also the struggles of gender expectations and class limitations. CRT helps us unpack how these various identities interact to create complex experiences of oppression and empowerment. So why does critical race theory matter in today's literary studies? Well, because literature plays a huge role in shaping how we see the world and understand each other. The stories we tell, the characters we root for, and the themes we explore all reflect larger societal norms and power structures. CRT pushes us to challenge those structures, to question who is being represented and how. and to think critically about the impact of race in both the texts we study and the world we live in. Moreover, CRT isn't just about pointing out problems, it's about imagining possibilities. It helps us see that literature can also be a tool for resistance, for challenging oppressive systems, and for giving voice to the marginalized. Authors like James Baldwin, Audre Lorde, and Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie have used their writing to confront racism, critique societal norms, and offer new ways of thinking about identity and justice. Their works aren't just stories, they're acts of defiance against a world that often tries to erase or diminish certain voices. In conclusion, critical race theory provides a powerful framework for analyzing literature. It helps us recognize the ways that race and power intersect within stories, characters, and even the literary canon itself. It challenges us to dig deeper, to look beyond the surface, and to understand the profound impact that race has on both the creation and interpretation of literary texts. Thank you so much for joining me today on Ask Literature. If you found this discussion on critical race theory helpful or thought-provoking, don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and hit that notification bell so you won't miss any of our future explorations into literary theory and analysis. Until next time, keep reading, keep questioning, and keep thinking critically. See you soon.